I've written for over 50 magazines, that is where you can really learn to tell a good story. Because a magazine article is not a 50 or 100,000 word book. Magazine article is like 1,200 words or 1,500 words. And you can reach more people with your magazine article than you ever will with your book. I mean, if your book sells 10,000 copies throughout the lifetime of the book, that's a good number in the book publishing world. In the magazine world, it's very easy to reach 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people with your magazine article.
Hey everybody, we're so excited today on Surviving Toxic Relationships and the Midlife channel. We have Terry Whalin today with us. Now, Terry understands both sides of the editorial desk. As an editor and a writer, he worked as a magazine editor, and his magazine work has appeared in more than 50 publications. A former book acquisitions editor for several publishers and a former literary agent, he's an acquisitions editor at Morgan James Publishing. He has written more than 60 books through traditional publishers in a wide range of topics, from children's books to biographies, and co-authored books. Over 20 years ago, in 11 days, Terry wrote a diet book called First Place by Carol Lewis, which has sold over 100,000 copies. Terry's newest book is 10 Publishing Myths, Insights Every Author Needs to Succeed. Today, everybody can get a physical copy of 10 Publishing Myths for only $10, including shipping, and it comes with over $200 of free bonuses. Get this special offer and look at our link on the description at publishingoffer.com. But today we really want to focus on what Terry can give to you in our audience about anybody that's out there thinking, this is my new chapter in life and I want to write a book. I want to do something different. I want to be an author. I've always dreamed about being an author, and now I'm in midlife and I'm excited about doing something that is in my heart. Or like Lizzie and I, we've come from a very toxic relationship, right? We had the same toxic ex, and we are considering now writing a book to tell about our story to help other people avoid that. So let's say you were in a terrible toxic relationship and you want to take this time in your life to talk about what you went through and share with other people and make that experience not wasted on what you went through, so that you can help other people that are lost and struggling and don't know what to do. And you can actually give them the peace and the serenity and the tools that you found to get better. No further ado, Terry, we are so excited that you're here. Let's chat about how you can write a book and all the myths out there that people think, I can't write a book. That's not for me. Yeah. Enlighten us, Terry.
Well, Dina and Lizzie, it's really great to be here with you. And, from my experience in publishing, there are basically 3 different routes that people take for publishing. There's the traditional route, going to one of the big 5 like HarperCollins or Simon Schuster or one of those kind of places. And to be honest, to get to those people is very difficult. I mean, they say that at any given time, there's like over 1 million of manuscripts and proposals that are in transit here. And so people have this stuff piled on their desk, but they're looking for very specific things. Like to get a traditional deal, often you have to have a literary agent. And to get a literary agent, it's often harder than to get published in the first place. So you can get pretty discouraged, from going that whole route. It can be a long route if you go that route. The second way that people publish is they self-publish. And the challenge with that is that word self. You do it all yourself if you do that. And I know a lot of people that do that. And the process to get self-published can be very costly. And I've met authors who have spent, anywhere from $6,000 to $20,000 to self-publish, and their book's only on Amazon. It's like, hey, why did you do that? And they say this average self-published book may sell a couple hundred copies throughout the lifetime of the book. So That's the problem with self-publishing, is that you do it all yourself. Now, there's this middle ground in between those that's called maybe hybrid or independent publishing. And that's the kind of stuff that we do at Morgan James. We've been in business 21 years. We've sold over 20 million books. We've produced over 6,000 titles. We're considered a medium-sized New York publishing house. We're doing somewhere between 180 and 200 books a year. Now, we are looking for people as well that have platforms and connections to the audience and readers and all that kind of stuff. But we're not looking for the kind of big numbers that maybe a traditional publisher or an agent is looking for. And the good news is that we're distributing our book into 98% of the bookstores in North America. So we're on over 180 online platforms. I usually tell our authors Amazon's a big customer of ours, but they're only 24% of our overall business. So the way I look at it, you publish with Amazon, you're missing 76% of what we do for the book out there. I mean, the other day I was looking for one of our book covers, and the very first place I found it was at Target.com, because Target's one of our places where we sell books. So you want to take a careful look at all these different options, is what my idea for you here is. And, ask questions and see which is the right way for you out there. It's different for every author. I'm looking for the authors that can do our system, and it's not right for everybody. And so you may look at what we do at Morgan James and say, well, that's not a good fit for me. And so you go a different direction. That's totally your prerogative. I understand that. But as a writer, you want to understand all your different options and then really examine those different options, ask good questions, get all the information, and see if it's the right thing for you to do.
That's perfect. Good intro. So, okay, let's say Lizzie and I have this crazy story where we were married to the same toxic narcissist, not at the same time, and we want to publish a book. And we're also in midlife and have gone through a lot of with midlife, all the changes, all the things that have happened, everything.
Sure.
So let's say that we want to go ahead and we want to publish a book. Now, we met you at a book writing conference. That's how we know you. So what I understand is, if we self-publish, I agree with you. We know many, many self-publishers who have spent up to even 30 or 40K, just creating their own book. But let's say we want to go the hybrid route and go with Morgan James. Is that going to cost us less money? And what are these kind of publishers, these hybrid publishers, looking for in writing? Like, are they looking for a certain genre? Are they looking for a certain type of story? Like, what would make me successful if I came onto your platform?
Yeah, we do publish all kinds of books. I mean, we're run by Christians, so none of our books have any profanity or explicit sex in them. But we do about 25 or 30 Christian books that are just for the Christian market. We call that our Morgan James Faith imprint. In the years I've been with Morgan James, I've done 4 books with the company, and one of them was a part of our Morgan James Faith imprint. It's a biography I did about Billy Graham that came out a few years ago. And so we do those kind of books. We do some novels. We do 25, 30 novels a year. We do a few picture books. It's pretty hard to find good children's picture books, but we do maybe 10 or 15 of those. The bulk of what we do is really in the category that I think your book would fall into, which is really the nonfiction trade book area. So we do business, self-help, how-to, all kinds of books like that. So what I commonly advise people to do is to start. You got to figure out where you start in this process. And the best place, I think, for people to start is with their book proposal. Because if you write a book proposal, that's essentially your business plan as far as what you're going to do. And in that process of writing a proposal, you sort of figure out, who's your reader, what are the chapters going to be, what are the competition to that book, what are you going to do to market the book, why you of all the people in the world to write this book. You answer all those kind of questions in the proposal. And as a frustrated acquisitions editor years ago, I wrote this book because I wasn't getting the type of submissions that I needed to get. And so I wrote this book out of my own frustration called Book Proposals That Sell, 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. Now, your listeners today can get a free copy of this book. All they have to do is go to book proposals, it's plural, bookproposals.ws for website. And that'll take you to a book funnel website where you can get the whole book for free. Now, we've learned at Morgan James, for example, that if I give away that book to you, and if you start to read it, there's a high probability you're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book. So I lose nothing by giving away the free ebook there. And Morgan James actually gives me those email addresses so I can grow my email list and all that kind of thing. So you asked about the cost too in this. I just tell you up front, Morgan James, for every book that we publish, we're going to spend $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 into that process. We've been on the New York Times list 29 different times, over 200 times on the USA Today and the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. For those kind of books, we're going to invest like $250,000 on those books before we sell any of them and get any money back. Our system at Morgan James does have an investment from the author, and that we call that a $6,000 upfront investment that you invest. And then you get, because you've invested that, then you get to buy books at the exact print cost. And so the reason we do that at Morgan James is we've learned through the years. I mean, we work with some big entrepreneurs, for example, and big business people, but we've learned that if the author invests nothing into the book, then they do no promotion on the book because they don't have any upfront investment. If they have an upfront investment, then they're like, oh, I've got to do something to get that money back that I've invested. So then they get active and they start to sell the book. And the print cost, what do I mean by that? Well, the print cost, it depends on the page length that you're going to do and the size of the book. But our ideal length for a nonfiction book like yours that you were talking about is really 200 pages, which is really 50 to 60,000 words. Now, our print cost at Morgan James for that book is $3.80. So up front, we're going to ask for that $6,000 investment, which is the $3 over the 2,000 book commitment up front, times 2,000. That's where we get that $6,000. It's very typical to sell a 200-page paperback at like $16, $17.95. So if you sold 2,000 copies of your own book at retail, you're going to gross over $30,000 selling all those books. So there is a lot of money to be made as an author selling your own books, provided you get them inexpensively from the publisher. And that's one of the things that we do in this process. So we design the book, we work with you on the cover, we pay royalties on all the books that are sold out there in the bookstore every month. We have a whole system about how we do that. Under our system, it's kind of like your book's on two tracks. There's a track where we're going to print books, push books to the bookstore, pay you a monthly royalty. And there's books that you get. Those are books that you sell on your podcast or on your website, and you keep all the money from that. We can also produce the book in about 3 to 4 months. You can have physical books from us. Getting them in the bookstore, we're about 9 months out on that part of the process, which is still quicker than a lot of publishers. Most publishers are 18 to 24 months out, traditional publishers, to get your book released. So we have a whole different system that I end up explaining to people here. We actually have a private Facebook group for our authors. They're all interacting with each other, going to each other's events. Most publishers would never put all their authors into a private Facebook group because they don't really want them to be interacting with each other. David Hancock, our founder, believes that as a group of authors, we're stronger if we cooperate with each other rather than compete. So we're just working on a whole different philosophy. We actually have over 1,400 authors that are in our private Facebook group. So it's a great place just to get ideas and see what people are doing. The other unusual thing about Morgan James is we're still coaching and working with authors that came to us in 2005. So 20 years we've been working with these authors. So some of these publishers, traditional publishers, I've worked with traditional publishers, for example, that will not, that I had one, I can think of a major Christian publisher I worked with years ago that paid me and my co-author like a 6-figure advance for this book. And I worked with them on the whole book. They didn't show me nor my co-author the cover of the book throughout the whole production process. It actually had my co-author's picture on the cover of that book. He hated that cover. He didn't show that cover to anybody, did no promotion on the book. So after 6 months, that publisher took that book out of print and destroyed those copies. I mean, I have some copies in my garage, but I think I'm one of the few people in the country having copies of that book. So we're very different in the way that we work with our authors on every step. We produce beautiful books, get them out there in the bookstore, as well as help you as an author to be able to know how to market your book, what kinds of things you could and should do in order to be able to sell books at the end of the day.
So for the $6,000, do you accept everybody's book proposal, or are you still picky about what you accept?
No.
Okay. I know. I just have to ask.
We're actually picky. No, it's a good question. We actually receive over 5,000 submissions a year and only do about 180, 200 books a year. But I am actively looking for the right books, to publish. And we turn down a lot of stuff. I talk with authors all over the world about their book, and sometimes it's the right thing and sometimes not. And so we gotta find good books at the end of the year, at the end of the day. And that's part of the challenge for any of us, to find the right fit for you and your book. And the story has to be good too. And so I always encourage authors, they forget about this, but I encourage them to write from. Part of the reason I've written from over 50 magazines is where you can really learn to tell a good story. Because a magazine article is not a 50 or 100,000 word book. A magazine article is like 1,200 words or 1,500 words. And you can reach more people with your magazine article than you ever will with your book. I mean, if your book sells 10,000 copies throughout the lifetime of the book, that's a good number in the book publishing world. In the magazine world, it's very easy to reach 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people with your magazine article. I mean, years ago, I worked for Billy Graham as associate editor of Decision Magazine. Back when I was there, we were doing 1.8 million copies of the magazine every issue. So you talk about reaching people, that's a great way to do that. And you build publishing credibility and all that in that process. I mean, when you write a magazine article, you learn how to have a good headline, how to have a good beginning, a middle, and end, how to write to a single point, all those kinds of basic writing things that all of us have to do in order to be able to tell a good story. And if you really think about it, if you write on a similar kind of topic, if you put 15, 20 of those magazine articles together, that can be a book. So it's all a matter of being kind of strategic about how you put it together and then building your credibility in the marketplace. Because when you write a magazine article, at the end of the magazine article, it says, hey, Terry Whalin, author of 10 publishing myths. And so you could send people, it's a way to promote your book. But you've got to get published out there as part of the problem, because those of us that are in publishing, we're looking for people who have been published in order to be able to publish them some more. So one of the easiest ways to break into this market is to write for magazines. And there's gobs of them out there. I mean, the latest Christian Writers Market Guide has over 150 periodicals that you can write for. So part of the thing about magazines that people don't realize is you've got to, all of them have guidelines, and most of the guidelines are on their website. So if you read the guidelines and deliver to them what they're asking for, that gives you a greater chance of getting published. So you don't send them a dog washing story if they don't publish anything about dogs, for example. So you've got to give them what they're looking for. But almost every one of these magazines are looking for something that every one of your listeners has. Personal experience stories. We all have strange things that happen in our lives, different unusual stories. So write those stories down as they happen, make little notes about the dialogue and what you can remember from it, because you can use those notes to go back and write those personal experience stories that you can sell to magazines. It'll help you.
That is such great insight, Terry, because I think a lot of people say, well, I want to write a book. They have no idea where to start. But kind of going back to your book, what prompted you with writing the 10 publishing myths? And what do you hope your readers will do after reading your book?
Yeah, I wrote 10 publishing myths because so much of the publishing process is outside of the author's control. It's just things that I can't have any control over. I can't make a bookstore buy your book. I can't make a reader go into the bookstore and buy your book. But there are some things that I can do. And so what I find from talking to authors all the time is they have unrealistic expectations, or myths is what I call them. So like the very first myth in the book is that my book will make a lot of money. And I don't care how their author is getting published, whether they're getting published by a well-known publisher that you know, or whether they're self-publishing, they all believe that they're going to make a lot of money. Now, you may make a lot of money when you publish your book, don't get me wrong, but that shouldn't be your primary motivation to write the book. You write the book because you're an expert on the topic, you want to get speaking gigs from it, you want to open up other opportunities in your life. Those are all good reasons to write the book. You're an expert on the topic, but making that you're going to make money, that isn't necessarily, that may or may not be the case, depending on what happens there. So part of what I did in each chapter of my 10 publishing myths book, at the very end of the chapter, I have what I call a myth buster action, because I wanted people to realize there was something practical that they could do in order to be able to not fall into this myth. So, for example, I talk to authors all the time, and they'll say, well, my audience is over on Facebook, or my audience is on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Well, now, don't get me wrong. Those are all good platforms, but I don't own Facebook. I don't own LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube or any of those places. Those are what we call in the business, we call those rented platforms, because I could do something tomorrow knowingly or unknowingly and get kicked off, or in Facebook jail, they call it, or whatever, So you don't want to build your stuff over there. You want to build your stuff on your own blog, your own website, your own newsletter, things that you can actually control and build more readers out there. So that's all part of the practical information that I tried to put in 10 publishing myths.
That's amazing, Terry. Thank you so much for that. So when we were at the Blue Ridge Conference and met you, I had heard from one of our courses that if you self-publish, it can be a negative for getting a future publisher. Can you confirm or deny and explain if that's the case?
Or is that one of the myths?
That one of the myths?
No, well, one of the myths is that the self-publishing is the best option, and I think Morgan James is a better option than self-publishing myself. But you're exactly right. If you do self-publish, you're basically creating a public record of your sales, because Amazon has those sales numbers there, and you can see where your ranking is compared to every other book that's published out there. So you want to be wise, I guess is what I'm trying to say, about what the steps that you're taking. If you're going to self-publish, I wish you all the best and go for it, but you have to understand that you are making a track record for yourself when you do that kind of thing. And I've seen some really good looking self-published books. I've seen some terrible looking self-published books. So, your cover, the design, the editing, all that is gonna play into how your book is received out there. And so there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people don't have any idea that's involved in the book publishing world.
So I think what you're saying is, if you have self-published just to kind of get yourself out there and do it the least expensive way, if it didn't take off possibly, and now maybe you have a book number 2 or a different idea and you want to use a publisher, like they will go look at